How hopeless is it when ordinary people end up buying an unfinished apartment? Some elderly people passed away without ever seeing their new home completed. Mom, when will our new house be ready? The child asks. There's no answer. Is life supposed to be this exhausting? All I wanted was a home. Is that wrong? Some people work hard their whole lives and finally move into a new apartment. Others work just as hard, only to end up in a half-built shell. This is the reality for homeowners in Yihefang, Baqiao District, Xi'an. Take this couple, for example. They came to the city when they were young to build a future. With no skills and no education, the man could only find work as a dishwasher in a restaurant. Today, he earns around $390 a month, and nearly $350 of that goes toward mortgage payments. The remaining $40, he still gives his daughter $28 each week for living expenses. They thought buying a home would mark a fresh start in life. Instead, it became an endless nightmare. The home they fought so hard to secure has turned into an unfinished building. Perhaps because of his honest and cautious nature, he's afraid the vacant unit will be taken over by squatters. So every couple of weeks, he and his wife take turns living there. Since the apartment is on the 13th floor and there's no elevator, every visit is a struggle, especially for his elderly mother-in-law. In 2011, Yihefang in Baqiao District, Xi'an, launched its pre-sale with prices several hundred yuan per square meter lower than surrounding developments, drawing in a wave of buyers. The developers promised that all units would be delivered in 4 years. But by 2014, the developer went bankrupt, and the project was left unfinished. Most homeowners were plunged into despair. To prevent their hard-earned homes from being seized, many buyers moved into the hopeless, half-built complex, living in units with no water, no electricity, and non-functioning elevators. One of them is Hong Mei. She still remembers vaguely when they first bought the apartment. Her son was still being carried on his grandfather's back. The whole family was excited to pick out their new home. According to the original plan, her son would start elementary school just as they moved in. But now her son is already in 6th grade, and the apartment is still in its original, unfinished state. Her elderly father passed away before ever stepping foot in the new apartment. And to make matters worse, because of the economic downturn, wages have become lower and lower. To reduce the burden on her children, the grandmother now eats only the bare minimum every day. As long as there's some steamed buns or noodles, she says, that's enough for 3 meals a day. But despite how things are, they have no choice. Even though the apartment has become a ghost project, the debt on their mortgage still needs to be paid on time each month. Every weekend, a group of these similarly unfortunate homeowners gathers to cook together. One man, now finishing up his meal, has spent his entire life doing manual labor. His plan had been to buy this new apartment as a wedding gift for his son. But ever since he learned the project was abandoned, he's been sleepless in his rented apartment. He finds it hard to believe that after a lifetime of hard work, not only did he return to square one overnight, he also ended up with mountains of debt. Still, he says, ever since he moved into the unfinished shell, he's felt at least a bit of peace. Because even if this concrete mess is falling apart, at the very least, it's his. And every time he talks about it, there's always a heavy weight in his heart. Perhaps for adults, this unfinished apartment is a psychological nightmare. But for children, it's their playground. Homeowner Li K bought this unit in 2012, back when he was still unmarried. He and his wife, along with both sets of parents, each contributed a portion of the down payment. Their plan was to make this their marital home. But now, their daughter is already 6 years old, and the apartment still hasn't changed at all. Every night, the daughter follows her parents to the unfinished building where they stay. Inside, the room has been carefully tidied. The walls are covered with things the daughter has written. Although there's no electric light for her to do her homework at night, her father still feels satisfied. He said, "There's sand to play with over there. Lots of other kids are around too. They all play in the courtyard and have fun." He feels that at the very least, his daughter can still jump and run freely in a place that's supposed to be their home. But in the hearts of the parents, they don't want their child to grow up in such an environment. The daughter's favorite song is The Painter. and she once said she hoped that one day she could paint this apartment into something she truly loves. Finally, in June 2022, the project resumed construction. But the developer asked each homeowner to pay an additional continuation fee of 1,800 yuan per square meter, totaling around $28,000. The apartment project was abandoned. The home can't be delivered, yet I still have to keep paying the mortgage. Why? We followed the rules. You signed the loan agreement back then, didn't you? So you have to pay it back. In other countries, people can stop paying the mortgage. For example, if I took out a loan of $98,000 to buy a house and later defaulted for some reason, the bank would repossess and auction off my property. If the sale only brought in $70,000, then the remaining $28,000 would be the bank's loss. The bank would have to bear that risk. Why should homebuyers in China bear 100% of the risk? Well, you just said it. That's abroad. Foreign countries have non-recourse loan systems. The bank shares the risk with the buyer. But here in China, it's a full recourse system. We don't bear the risk. Whether the project is abandoned or you default for some other reason, you still have to repay the mortgage. If the auctioned home isn't enough to cover your loan, we have the right to go after your other assets, including garnishing your wages and income, until the full amount is repaid. But this mortgage is between you and the developer. Isn't it your responsibility to assess whether the developer has a risk of abandoning the project? If they can't deliver on time, then repayment should be postponed or even canceled. Buying something should be simple. You pay, I deliver. If you delay delivery, I delay payment. If you can't deliver at all, I stop paying. Why is it different when it comes to real estate? We did assess them. According to current regulations, we don't issue loans unless the main structure of the building is complete. That's our way of screening for risk. What more do you want? The only rational way to do this is, if the developer hasn't reached the delivery stage, they shouldn't be approved for loans. That way, there's no risk of unfinished projects. But now the system rewards them. Developers build homes without using their own money. You banks lend them the money. All they do is pay a bit upfront for the land. Don't tell me there's no risk in that. The bank's risk, the risk of an unfinished project, it's all dumped on us, the buyers. Is that fair? So it turns out none of you are at fault. We're the only ones who are wrong. If we did make a mistake, it's that we trusted you too much. That's how the rules work. If you default, we blacklist your credit report. Even if it goes to court, you still have to pay. Ordinary people live for a bowl of rice, not for a credit score. What's it like to spend $140,000 on an unfinished apartment? You don't die, but you can't lie flat either. It's like surviving a disaster. Exhausting, suffocating, and filled with resentment. They say politeness will take you anywhere. Do you believe that? We paid the down payment. We've been repaying the mortgage for years, yet the apartment was never even built. So we run around everywhere, begging, pleading, asking anyone we can find for help. And in the end, we're told, there's no money, figure it out yourself. Then what about the money in the supervision account? Everyone knows it was misused, but no one does anything about it. For the sake of this broken apartment, the homeowners are mentally and physically drained. After 2 years of defending our rights, every single one of us is utterly exhausted. But who sees it? Who actually cares about the lives of ordinary people? Buying a home, how hard can it be? People say, you should have bought a completed unit back then. Sure, everyone knows that now, but isn't it too late? How much money do ordinary folks have? We just wanted to save a little by buying early. All those beautiful dreams we once had, they're gone now. All that's left is waiting. Maybe it's fate. You ask what the experience is like? Haha, it's like this. When nothing happens to you, the world feels great. Everything is smooth. Everything is wonderful. But when something does happen, you realize how powerless ordinary people truly are. You're the chives. You're the rubber ball. Say any more, and it's just tears. Ha. Why are so many people defaulting on mortgages these days? And why is the divorce rate climbing too? Actually, they stem from the same logic, because modern housing and marriage are both no longer suitable for long-term commitment. If it can be rented, people rent it. If it's not essential, people are selling it off. There are 3 reasons behind this. First, the rent-to-price ratio is ridiculously low. Let's talk housing. A healthy rent-to-price ratio is between 200 and 300. That means it should take around 17 to 25 years of rent to recover the purchase cost of a property. If it takes longer than 25 years, that means the housing price is too high. But right now in eastern China, how absurd have things gotten? In small towns, you can rent a nicely renovated 3-bedroom apartment for about 1,000 per month. That's only around $140. A year of rent? Just over $1,400. Even if you rent it for 30 years, you'll spend no more than $40,000. But if you want to buy that same apartment, including renovation costs, you'd be paying about $700,000 or $98,000. Forget recovering your investment in 17-25 years. Even after 30, 50, or 70 years, you likely won't break even. By the time your property rights expire, you still won't have made back your money. And don't forget, 30 years later, the place is basically a slum. Back in 1998, my family bought a place in our county town. It's not a total ruin today, but it has no heating, no elevator, no soundproofing, and basically no property management. The building's a mess, and the electrical wires are exposed. Even if you tried to sell it for $10,400, no one would want it. Other than some elderly retirees, no one lives there. Some people say, but your rent will go up eventually. Sure, but so will your salary and everything else. Inflation applies to everything. Renting for 30 years is only equivalent to spending $30,000-$40,000 in today's money. That's your current purchasing power. Now about marriage. Same issue. The return on investment is too low. Let's say you go for massages every week and hang out at KTV every month. Even with all that, your annual expense is minimal. With $14,000, you could live like royalty. But if you get married, you're looking at a house, a car, basic requirements, an apartment for $112,000, renovations for $28,000, appliances $14,000, parking $20,000, bride price ranging from $14,000 to $42,000, and a wedding for several thousand more. Altogether, you're out at least $210,000. And what do you get in return? Even before any parenting begins, you've already emptied your wallet. But that same $210,000 could buy you 15 years of bachelor luxury. So good you'd be floating in bliss. Second, the user experience is terrible. Once the home is in your name, you immediately owe deed tax, then property management fees, utilities, and heating. What you spent over $140,000 on is just a concrete shell. After deducting the shared building area, your usable space isn't even 100 square meters. 2 people might manage. But once you have a kid, maybe your mom moves in to help. Suddenly, you've got clothes and junk everywhere. You have to learn storage techniques just to make the place look like a livable home. That's why so many people pause while scrolling through social media when they see those ultra-clean, minimalist homes. Because most people realize, after buying, their place is anything but refined. The balcony? You're unsure whether to hang clothes or not. Cook a single meal and your kitchen looks like a war zone. The clutter? Endless. No matter how you clean, it still feels messy. Why? Because it's just not as spacious as the family plot back in the village. Go back and look at your old rural home. It's probably 200 plus square meters, with a yard, high ceilings. No wonder it felt open and comfortable. To get that kind of house today, you'd need at least $3.490,000 in a small town. In a major city, you're looking at tens of millions. Otherwise, you're crammed into a shoebox apartment and calling it a villa. Marriage is the same. Terrible experience. If you're single and earn around $10,000, $1,400 a month, it's hard to even spend it all. You could be living it up with beer, seafood, gaming cafes, dance clubs, zero stress. But if you're married and still earn the same, you're scraping by. Buying a $1.40 pancake roll becomes a dilemma. You end up going with the $1 version. No egg. Your old quilt has holes, and when you check the price, $8, you suck it up for another year, and now you've got arthritis. And worse, you can't even complain. You're expected to provide emotional support to your partner. If you vent, your partner vents harder. You're supposed to understand each other. But if you're struggling, does that make things easier for them? Third, it's hard to get rid of real estate. A few years ago, I had some savings, and all those financial gurus and personal development bloggers said, if you have 200,000 or 300,000, $28,000 to $2,000, don't buy a car, buy property. Houses appreciate and are liquid assets. Cars depreciate. Now I want to find those bloggers and slap them through the internet. What has the property appreciated to? People who bought between 2018 and 2022 have lost their shirts. Selling? Incredibly hard. At least with a car, you can sell it anywhere. If you have an Audi A6, buyers from any city can take it. But housing, it's locked to your city, and even then, it depends on the neighborhood. No one from another city will settle there. And even within your city, only people who live or work nearby, or whose kids go to school nearby, will consider it. On top of that, the unit layout and floor level must meet their standards. When you do try to sell, you'll realize, in the whole city, barely a handful of people are even interested. Once you're stuck with it, you can't shake it off. Want to sell without losing at least $100,000, $200,000, $14,000, $28,000? Good luck. Marriage is the same. Once you're in and you want to exit, it's a nightmare. You have to wait out a cooling off month. Then you have to settle custody. Then you divide assets. And remember, you spent a fortune just to get married. You think you'll get any of that money back when you divorce? Go ahead. Guess. What happened to the homeowners around me who bought unfinished or delayed properties? Old Joe is from Hunan and runs a business collecting and selling wild mushrooms. He bought a unit from a state-owned enterprise project, but construction was halted for a long time. Ever since he bought into this unfinished development a few years ago, he's been trying to save himself. During that process, he met other homeowners from across the country who were in the same situation. That's how I got to know Zhao, through the internet. This time, I had a business trip to Kunming for a legal case, so I arranged to visit his home. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. I even joked that my stopover happened to be perfect timing. On the way there, we reminisced about those days when we were fighting with the developer, strategizing and enduring together. Is this the complex? Yeah. Which building did you buy? Building 15, over there. Zhao's unit was supposed to be delivered in 2021. After failed attempts to organize homeowners to pressure the developer, he eventually made peace with the idea that, even if he lost in court, he was going to confront the developer anyway. He decided to rely on himself to seek justice. I still remember how helpless he sounded when he said, "Do you know how many mushrooms I need to sell to afford just this one apartment?" So, two young people who had never met in person started working together online. We coordinated the lawsuit, researched documents, organized arguments, and gathered evidence to counter the developer's excuses of force majeure and prove their misuse of escrow funds. Strangely enough, after several homeowners began filing lawsuits, the construction site suddenly ramped up. The number of workers surged, several times more than before. Since our case was the first ever lawsuit against this developer, they took it seriously. They even spent nearly $100,000, about $14,000, to hire a top-tier legal team to defend them. What did we have? Just two post-90s homeowners doing their own legal work. Even though we were well prepared, the judge still ruled against us. His reasoning? The house is almost ready for delivery. The purpose of your lawsuit can be achieved through negotiation. The sudden rush to finish the project left us with mixed feelings, relief and doubt. We realized that moving forward with a second trial might not be the smartest move at that point. But then, something unexpected happened. Even though we had technically lost, the developer still reached out to us, willing to negotiate and settle. In hindsight, we realized what made the difference. The asset preservation order filed in Zhao's name. That move had real power. Back then, we managed to freeze about $1 million, around $140,000 of the developer's assets. For those unfamiliar with the concept of asset preservation, here's a quick explanation. This amount was frozen during our online enforcement request, which meant the developer couldn't use or transfer those funds. If we had won the lawsuit, Homeowners could have directly claimed that money through court enforcement. This step alone solved the common fear many people had that there's nothing left to claim. We also wanted to dig into irregularities in planning and design changes as another potential breakthrough. But because the developer was desperate to unfreeze the funds and avoid further legal pressure from us, they finally agreed to negotiate. Even though we lost the lawsuit, the developer offered Old Joe a deal. He could swap his high-rise unit for a nearly completed low-rise apartment, plus get a parking space. Now, swapping units isn't necessarily any easier than getting a refund. It's basically like canceling the old unit and buying a new one. This involves deregistering the original property contract and re-signing a new one. Old Joe took me to the complex. We walked to the base of the high-rise building. He knew exactly where his original unit had been. He still remembered the layout. I think it was the 15th floor. There was something unforgettable about the moment he first stepped away from that crumbling, abandoned shell. That pain etched itself into memory. Then he showed me the new unit he received. He said that after the new year, they'd begin renovations, and the whole family would finally move in. That night, they turned a painful page and started a new life. Compared to other homeowners in the complex, Old Joe was lucky. But in my eyes, he earned that luck through hardship and persistence. As we've said before, we can afford to lose a case, but people who've never resisted don't get to point fingers at us. Old Joe's story also gave me some insight. When developers stall construction, many frustrated homeowners rush to file lawsuits, vent on social media, or spread outrage online. But what if more of them came together, united early, and used legal tools, whether asset preservation or pre-delivery enforcement, to lock down unspent funds for completing construction? Wouldn't that be a way forward? Of course, getting a majority of homeowners to unite may be even harder than fixing the buildings themselves. As for me, I was already at rock bottom, so any direction was upward. As the sun set, Old Zhao turned to me and joked, "You're quite something. You started out as just another homeowner and somehow ended up a lawyer. Do you even feel anything anymore after meeting so many people like us?" Some homeowners, he said, just want to return their units because property prices dropped. But that's overly simplistic. Is the building even finished? If it's not, how are you going to return it? There are projects that haven't moved at all, just empty shells sitting there. Some are literally piles of dirt you could roast sweet potatoes on. I told him, I'm not numb, just calmer. When I see sunlight falling on tall buildings in the distance, and I remember how broken they once were, that moment still brings tears to my eyes. When facing halted construction and unfinished homes, I've seen people scream at the camera, venting their rage. I've seen others flooding online forums, demanding justice. That's one kind of response. But when the onlookers scatter and the noise fades, those problems still remain. So someone has to stay. Someone has to silently dive into the darkness, endure the mockery and doubt, and walk that thorn-covered path. Some silence is louder than screams. We chose this path. Both the past and the future are hard. But if we keep moving forward, then hardship has no choice but to retreat. And after we've gone, they will come fix your homes. China social trends. Just how hopeless can ordinary people feel when they end up buying an unfinished housing project? They're still forced to repay their mortgage loans every month, while the developers who collected billions of yuan and then abandoned construction walk free, untouched by the law. As of 2023, China has more than 50 million vacant apartments, enough to house nearly 1.5 billion people. In Henan province alone, there are at least 900 stalled housing projects, affecting over 1 million families. Once promising cities like Ordos, Inner Mongolia, Tianshui, Gansu, or new districts in Shenyang, Tianjin, and Guizhou have now become ghost cities, deserted and crumbling under the weight of broken promises. Millions of people poured their life savings and loans into chasing a dream, only to be left with cold, concrete shells. No electricity, no water, and no future. What do you think will happen if China's real estate bubble fully bursts? Who will pay the price? Ordinary citizens, or the ones who built castles out of other people's money? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story from China's social trends. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.